Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking through everything that I read in the month of October and some of the things and pieces that I got up to. So we will just dive in and talk about October and what I have managed to achieve over the past month. And I'd say it's been a pretty good reading month. Over the course of the month I read 8 books, which I'm pretty happy with. That's one of my higher reading months of the year. Although the page count is not so high, I think I ended up reading quite a few books, but they were slightly shorter. So the page count is 2,732. So I think normally I get into the 3,000, so I must have been reading some shorter books, but it meant the quantity was more. And I do have 3 books sort of on the go. One I'm really focusing on, and then 2 that I've sort of like dipped in and out of. So I will talk about those as well towards the end of the wrap up. Of the books that I finished, 5 of them were fantasy and 3 were fantasy romance. So pretty consistent with the genres there. And I think even with the fantasy ones, there was quite a lot of romantic subplots within them. So it was quite a fantasy romantic month. 6 of the books were adult, 2 were in that like bridging the gap between YA and adult section. I pretty much enjoyed everything that I read. I had no new favourites in October, but things were consistent. So I had 6 4-star reads, 1 3.5 star and 1 3-star. I think going into the month, the end of September into the first like couple of reads into October were like I was in a 3-star rut and I was just getting 3-star after 3-star, and then I seemed to get out of that and get into like a 4-star, and I just went through 4 stars for the rest of the month. I finished 1 series, progress. I continued, or 3 of the books were continuations. I continued in 2 series, and I started 2 new ones, although one of them I do not anticipate I will be continuing on with, that I'm just going to park it there, which leaves my on the go consistently at 29, clinging on to the 20s but not climbing. So yeah, still at 29, positive, but you know, movement, we're making progress. That's the summary of what I have done. Before diving into the details of each of those, in terms of what I got up to, I had a pretty not super eventful October. Like, it was a good month, but there's nothing like, it's definitely not as big as September. So I went to Portugal for my friend Joanna's wedding. We went to the Algarve. It was beautiful, it was stunning. It was like going back to summer because it was quite warm. It was just a very lovely weekend. I had my fiance's birthday. We went out for a very lovely lunch and just had a lovely time together, wandering around Notting Hill and that area of London. And then I had quite a few like trade shows at work, just normal like work things, but I think with the trade shows I got a little bit ill, so I had a bit of time where I was filled with cold, and I'd say that's about it. And then October just has happened. It's gone, it's passed, it is what it is, and we're into November. So going through what I have read, we will start off by saying that I have been doing my reread of the Witchlands series. So I've been making some really good progress in this. I have listened via audiobook to books 2 and 2.5. So I read Wind Witch and Sight Witch. These are the Truth Witch series I've been really enjoying. I read it many years ago, and the 5th and final book in the series is coming out in November. So I'm making progress so that I'll be able to finish this whole series off by the end of the year. This is a really fun series of following the main characters Safi and Isolde, and it's set in the world where people have different magics, and Safi is a truth witch, so she's able to tell if someone is lying, and this is a very coveted power, and the rulers of the empires, of the different empires, want to be able to control her. She has hidden this magic for many years, but it has just come out, and so now she's at the in the middle of this conflict that's going on between all these powers. We're coming to the end of a 20-year truce, and that's another reason why it's all coming to like a crucible of events and these battles which are about to start coming to play. In this we've continued on in seeing what's happening. I think the way Susan Dennard has got all the different characters, so we have multiple different points of view aside from just Safi and Isolde. We've got some of the one of the princes within the world, another character who's a blood witch who is able to like follow people and set people by their blood and is able to like heal himself with his blood, and we're exploring more of their powers. Obviously there's a wind witch who is able to control like the air and the wind. That's the one of the princes. It's really interesting exploring that. It's interesting exploring some of the like lore of the world and diving more into that, and also the sort of threats and the different factions that are battling against each other for control and resources and where that's all going to be going with this rising threat as well from an external force. And then Sight Witch is sort of like a prequel in a way. We're following one of the characters, Ryber, who's a side character within the rest of the series, and seeing where she's from, and she is a Sight Witch, is exploring that and that part of the world and the Sight Witch history and the Sight Witch lore. So it sort of stands alone in a way that it's a little bit separated from the rest of the core books. But I had a really good time listening to both of these. I have started Blood Witch, which is book 3. I'm not very far into this, I'm like 50 pages in. So this is, one of the 3 books that I have on the go. And I will be continuing to read this one into November, and this is my final one that is a reread. I will then be getting into new books, or books 4 and 5 will be new to me. So although I feel like because it's been so long, all of these are feeling like they're quite fresh, that I'd forgotten so much. So there's not loads of points in these that I've remembered. But yes, excited to continue on with this and working my way through the series. I also had a little bit of a Ali Hazelwood moment in October. So her new release, Mate, came out. This is, I haven't really counted these as a series, I sort of just had them as standalones, but I guess it is a series. It follows on from Bride, which is her paranormal romance series, following werewolves and vampires. In this one, we're following a main character, Serena, who we meet in the first book, and as well Cohen. I'm trying to think about what I can say without spoiling the end of the first book, but we're following those two. There's a threat on Serena's life, and Cohen is doing his best to protect her from external forces. There's still lots of threat going on between the vampires, the humans, the werewolves, and how these 3 peoples are living together or not really living together, and the threats to each of these peoples. I had a lot of fun with this. I don't think it's my favourite Ali Hazelwood. That I enjoyed it, I had a lot of fun. I find her stories very compulsively readable, extremely compulsively readable. That the way that she just, I don't know, writes, crafts things, I find it absolutely easy to fly through her books, that you blink and you've suddenly read 100 pages. And that, I think, is a real skill, that is a real art, to be able to like completely hook somebody in. These aren't my most favourite characters of hers. That I did believe in their romance, I did believe in them, but I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more potentially. I guess it's hard for me to quite pinpoint what was missing, but I think it was only a 4-star Ali Hazelwood and not a 5-star Ali Hazelwood. But I had a lot of fun. And I also read from her Hot for Slayer, which is her novella that she released with Amazon. So it was like under 100 pages, just because I was like, oh, let's just continue on reading a little bit of Ali Hazelwood, this is fun. And she's put out so many books this year, like so many books. So this is just a novella. It is following a vampire and a vampire slayer, and they have been at war for hundreds of years, that he is tasked with killing anyone that is from like her bloodline, and they've now reached the modern day, and they've been in this sort of back and forth for many years, but it's got to the point where they both sort of feel fated that neither of them can die unless it's by the other person's hand. I, again, had a lot of fun with this one. I really liked exploring the different like eras through history and their comings and goings, and how they'd meet and then separate and meet and then separate, and exploring the different parts of history that they've gone through together. I would have liked this to be longer, actually, that whole, I guess, lore of vampires and them going through different timelines, I find really interesting. I think I've seen it in, I guess, Addie LaRue in a way, where that has the nature through history. So I would have enjoyed it being more, and seeing a little bit and having it all just expanded into a full-length novel. But I had a lot of fun with it. I enjoyed it, and I'd recommend it if you're after a quick fun time. So that was my little Ali Hazelwood moment. I also had, I guess, a new release moment. Quite a few things are, well, I guess Mate was also a new release. So new releases and new starts of series. I dived into Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber, which I had on my radar. I, for some reason, thought this was a standalone by her. It's not a standalone. It's not. It's the start of the series. So I accidentally started this one, but it was short, it was fun. Stephanie Garber, like Ali Hazelwood, has a way with words where she just completely like grabs me and hooks me in, and you can fly through the pages and you just don't really notice them disappearing. This series. This book is set in LA, and we're following a main character, Holland St. James, and she has taken this class at school which is on like local legends and myths and lore, and she's always trying to spot these things in real life until one day she actually does. But this spells sort of her entry into this world of magic, and it's not all that pleasant for her. And there's these two strangers that enter into her life, and she's got to figure out which one is actually there to support her and help her, and which one is there for her demise, and who is lying to her, as they sort of traverse across LA on this hunt, this treasure hunt. I had a lot of fun with this. I think it has a lot of the cliches that you see through other Stephanie Garber books, that you could definitely tell it was her and her writing, despite the change of scene from the Caravel Once Upon a Broken Heart universe, that the plotting of it all felt quite reminiscent of that. And I enjoyed our characters, I enjoyed the romantic like subplot that went throughout this. I would recommend it if you have enjoyed Stephanie Garber's books in the past. I think if you haven't enjoyed her books, then you're probably not going to like this one, and just because it's set in a modern world, it's not going to change that. I will definitely be continuing on with this when the sequel comes out, who knows when, but I accidentally started this one. I did get the Devil Good for One Favour edition because I think these are so pretty. Stephanie Garber really lucks out on her covers, and that there was like 4 editions of these with a different thing on the front, and I got the W.H. Smith edition. And then the other new release that I read Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider, which is the start of a duology. It's a fantasy romance. This was the Waterstones edition, which I saw and I was like, oh, that's really pretty, you can come home with me. And I was actually a little bit disappointed in this one. And that's the book. So this might be going up on Vinted because I found this quite generic and boring and I guess a bit repetitive, and oh dear. I'll tell you what it's about. So we're following a main character, Bryn, who has spent all of her life living on this island of the Alhalla, and they are unable to go to the mainland apart from like once a year to go to this market, and so she has never set foot on the mainland. And at the very beginning of the book, she goes there with her like cohort or class of warriors for that season, and ends up starting a battle with one of the locals, and that ignites a conflict. The Alhalla are unable to go onto the mainland because of past wrongs, and so there is this threat. There's a threat or a conflict brewing between them and the mainland empires. We're following that. Obviously there's a strong romantic plotline with it being a fantasy romance, and so there's Bryn trying to find her place within this world. There's a potential romance back on with the Alhalla people on that land, but also this is then more to Bryn than originally meets the eye, and what is her history and backstory, and why can't she remember any of her childhood prior to her being 7 years old, with this male from the mainland that is trying to, I guess, like show her who she really is. So there was a lot of cliches, I'd say, through this that I've seen before in other fantasy romances, that I don't think it really brought anything new to the table. That our main character, I wasn't overly interested in her or in the romance or in the way that like she's just an average girl, but maybe not, maybe there's a lot more to her. And there were moments through this that I enjoyed, and there were some twists and turns that I was like, oh, that's a really interesting one, with some of the like magical creatures and some of the magical powers that certain people had, which I found interesting. However, I think the twist at the end of this is just there for shock value. I feel like since finishing this, see people being like, oh my god, the twist. And I'm like, there was nothing throughout the book that would lead you to think that this was going to be a twist, that it comes out the blue, and there was no foreshadowing for it. Like if there was foreshadowing, I'd be like, I could appreciate this twist. This twist was just there, and it felt like it was just added onto the book for a twist, because you're like, okay, what would be the most shocking thing? Let's just do that. But it doesn't actually make sense for the story. It was just, oh, how can we have a sequel? How can we like throw things like, how can we shock people? How can we get people interested in, because the rest of this book has been quite boring, let's suddenly spice it all up so everyone wants to read the sequel. This was a disappointment. I mean, it was easy to read. That was one thing. It was easy. It was easy to read. But that shouldn't be the only positive of a book. Okay, the other two things, or the last two things, are some sequels finales that I got up to. So I read a new release finale, which was Thief of Night by Holly Black, which is the finale to Book of Night, which is a sort of modern fantasy paranormal story set where shadows have power, and if you feed your shadow and give it blood, it can become its own entity, own person, own thing, and you are able to control it, and you can shape it into different things. And we're following our main character Charlie, who is a bartender, but she has a secret role where she'll be sleuthing around and finding things for, I guess, the wrong people. And the ending of the first book had quite a cliffhanger that worked, a cliffhanger that I enjoyed, and so it was really interesting to see how that all evolved as we moved into this book. I think this one was quite fun. I wonder if I would have enjoyed it more if I had reread the first one just before going into it, or if I'd read them closer together. But I feel as though I remembered quite enough from the first book. I think the setting isn't necessarily my favourite, that I am not overly attached to the modern setting, and Charlie's sort of like bar, grungy lifestyle, that is just potentially not very me. But I enjoyed seeing how the romance, I guess, blossomed through this, and the twists and the turns and the magic system I found was really interesting. We'll definitely be continuing to read from Holly Black in the future. I think she mixes her fantasy and romantic elements together really well and makes them quite engaging, and I'd recommend this series. I feel as though I saw a lot of, I guess, more mixed and negative things when Book of Night came out, but I think that if you did enjoy Book of Night, then you'll probably enjoy Thief of Night, that it had I enjoyed it probably to like a similar extent and a similar level, that it was a fun time. I'm really happy that I wrapped this up, and I do think the magic system was really interesting. And finally, I have Paladin's Strength by T. Kingfisher. This is the second book in the Paladin's Grace series, which is a fantasy but very sort of cozy romantic plot throughout it. We are following Ishtavan, who is a paladin, and we get introduced to these paladins in the first book. There's a group of paladins whose god that they worshipped has now died, and so they have been recovering from this and trying to live in this world where what they worship and who they praised is no longer around, and how that has affected them. And we're also following Clara, who is a nun on the run, and they fall in together, and they're both heading in a similar direction on differing quests, that they are both trying to figure things out, that Clara is in search of her other missing nuns, and Ishtavan is trying to figure out some of the threats to this world that were unearthed in the first book. I really enjoyed this pairing. I found it really fun seeing their dynamic, seeing them together, and seeing both of them having had some sort of like traumas and things that they are trying to work through, and both of them realising this and coming together and being supportive of each other. And the fantastical elements of this and the quest I found really engaging as well, and what that was working towards. Like, I'm really enjoying seeing the expansion of this world and the different cities that we are visiting, and the magic and the lore. I know that I now need to pause on this series and read the Clockwork Boys duology and Sword Heart before continuing on with the next Paladin book. But I have overall been having a really good time with this one, and T. Kingfisher is just a really fun author, and would highly recommend this. So that is everything that I have finished. I have, I guess, paused reading The Isle in the Silver Sea. I have got about 100 pages into this, and I'm really struggling with it. I am just not finding myself very engaged with this. I'm really sad about it because I really like Tasha Suri. I really like Tasha Suri and her books, but I have not been able to get into this one. It is a knight story where it combines medieval folklore, and you have this story between a witch and a knight, and they're destined to fall in love and kill each other in every single lifetime, and we're following that iteration come again, and if they can break this the nature of this story and this curse that's upon them. And I'm just not getting into it. I've struggled, and I keep thinking that I'm going to get into it, and I just haven't. I think we're just going to put this one down for now and park it, but I don't know how other people are feeling about this. It has just only come out now, like the actual publication date has just happened at the end of October, so I don't know how other people are feeling about this, but I've not been able to get through it. And then the book that I am currently reading and really focusing my energy on is Alchemized by Sen Yu. I'm making some excellent progress in this. I am, I think by the end of October I was about 600 pages into this. I'm now 654. I've been making some very solid progress in this. I'm not quite finished because it is 1,000 pages, but I went from reading some short books to reading a very, very long book. But I'm having an amazing time, like with Manacled, which I read in September. Oh, it was September. I'm having a great time reading this one. I know that I'm reading, I guess, similar based stories close together, and I'm definitely seeing some similarities, but I'm still having an amazing time. In this, we're following my character Helena, and we start and the war has ended and the dark forces have won, and she has been captured and kept imprisoned for many, many years until it comes to her release. It's set in a world with alchemy and necromancy being the bad side, and Helena was a healer during this war, and you are following her as she gets let out of this imprisonment, and they realise that she has a lot of memories that are missing, and so the Dark Leader figures that within these memories is the key to his downfall, and so they are trying to unearth and torture her to really get these memories out of her head. But she can't remember them either, and so you're following that until you get to the point where you start in part 2 to experience all of these memories. I'm having an amazing time with this, would highly recommend, and that's what I'm going to be starting or continuing in November with. This and Blood Witch are the priorities for the first bit of November. So there we go, that is everything that I've read in the month of October. Let me know how your reading in October has gone, and if you've read any of these ones and your thoughts on any of them. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!